Good evening, everybody. We are about to begin our class number 10 of Advanced Course in Drones for Development. Today is a very special class for me because we're going to discuss two important topics with two very important people. The first speaker of the day would be Shravan. Shravan is the founder of Avianco Technologies, which is the only Indian company which is giving us UTM solutions. So congratulations, Shravan, for doing that. And the second speaker of the day would be Olivier Defawe, who is from Village Reach. Now, Village Reach is an organization which I really admire for the work that they do. So we will be having these two presentations today. Welcome, both of you. And I request Shravan to please start your presentation.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Ruchi. Are you able to see my screen now?
Hold on.
All right. So good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to be here, and it's a pleasure to be here. Anytime I'm in a forum where it's an opportunity to share the knowledge with others, and also use it as an opportunity to enhance my own knowledge. So I'm going to look this as an opportunity to enhance my own knowledge on the UTM system, because I see that there are several people from across the globe, with different backgrounds and different experiences. And I do see that Mr. Dilip Kumar from Airport Authority of India, with his vast experience and background, from the airport management, air traffic management. So, sir, I'm going to look to you to learn from you as well as part of today's class. So I will be your student. So this is how I have structured this. We're going to keep this very open. We'll probably spend the first 15-20 minutes, going through. We'll talk about, share what is a unmanned traffic management system is, and what's the need for it, and how it works and things like that, and then we'll keep the last 20-30 minutes kind of like an open question and answer, so that we can see if anybody has any questions.
Can I request you something? It would be
Go
good
ahead.
if we keep the presentation to 10 to 15 minutes only, because we also have Olivier who has to speak. And if you think you have a longer presentation, do you mind if I let Olivier speak first?
I don't have longer presentation. I thought it was for 60 minutes total, but that's fine. We can go ahead. And I'll cover this up in 10-15 minutes.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Thanks for letting me know that. So then we will jump right into the information. Anytime if anybody has any questions, either have it or post it in the chat. So we'll address them at the end of the presentation, 15 minutes. A little bit about our company. Like Dr. Ruchi said, Avianco is based in Bangalore in India, and I am personally here in USA, but I do travel between India and USA, because of the business reasons. We are very proud and we are excited that we are the only Indian company with the indigenous UTM solution. So we are building the UTM from the scratch, and we are the only company. As a company, we are completely people from aerospace and aviation background. Our core team is completely aerospace and aviation professionals. As a company, we do offer engineering services in terms of the hardware, software, building the systems for the aircrafts and UAVs. And then we are also focused on building the next generation UTM and ATM solutions. So as part of the UTM system, we are planning to offer this system in multiple formats, and we will be looking at what are those different formats. But just to give you an idea, a platform, software as a service platform with the APIs and web and mobile applications. And we're also very excited that we are the only Indian UTM company that is taking part in the Indian BVLOS experiments. This is a picture that I just wanted to throw out there for a second, and just wanted everyone to take a look at it, and so that this is going to give us an intro to what a UTM system is basically. If you look at this, if you look at level 2 and above, right, or level 1 and above, 500 feet and above, we all are probably familiar with the flights, aircrafts that we always fly, right? From when you're traveling from one place to another place, you're probably flying by one of the airlines. which is probably flying at a higher altitude of 15,000 or maybe even 30,000 feet and above. There are also other aircraft that you are probably aware, general aviation, helicopters and 2 to 6 seater aircrafts and things like that. And you are probably also have seen some cargo drones that fly at a lower altitude around 4,000 feet, that carry some cargo type of stuff. So this space, I'm very sure that most of you are fully familiar with. But if you look at this space, the space below 500 feet, level 1, this is a new space where lately we are all engaged in, right? In terms of the drones and UAVs, RPA, remote pilot aircraft, whatever the different names that we use. Ultimately, common name is the drone that we're talking about, or UAV. This is a new space where it's evolving very fast. With the drones and the drones being used in different scenarios and different use cases, including the medical supplies, precision agriculture and crop spraying, mining, inspecting the wind turbines, power line inspections and telecommunication tower inspections, responding to the emergency, oil and gas assets inspections, pipeline inspections, railroad inspections, and and people flying for hobby, at a lower altitudes, and if there's a wildfire going on, assisting with those kinds of. So this is a space with a lot of variety of applications that you see that the UAVs are being used, and this is a new space, being kind of like evolving in the last 4 to 5 years, right? And the difference is that in this space, anything that's being flown, you all are probably familiar with the air traffic control and the air traffic management, right? So the ATC towers, stationed at airports. So they manage these vehicles, the ATC towers manage these vehicles. But when it comes to the 500 feet and below, anything that's flying below 500 feet, since this is a new area, we call it as low altitude airspace. This is a new area where this space is huge, evolving. We don't have the systems and infrastructure in place where to manage this traffic, and this traffic is going to be probably much more higher in volume than this traffic for a given airspace. So imagine that you have hundreds or thousands of UAVs flying in this low altitude airspace where it is very close to the ground assets as well. How are we going to? The problem that's going to come up is that how are we going to make sure that these are properly managed? Right. So with the increasing personal and commercial use of these drones in this low altitude airspace, the problem that you're going to see is that how do we manage this evolving space and increasing volume of UAV operations, ensuring that the operations are safe, and the operations are secure, and they're also not causing any privacy reasons concerns to the citizens, as well as they're also safer in terms of the ground hazard risks and things like that. So there are no systems in place. This is a new space, right? So that is where there is a need for a system like an ATC, air traffic control, for the UAVs, and that system is nothing but the unmanned traffic management system. So ATC or ATM is for the aircrafts, let us say, to simplify for understanding, whereas the UTM is for the UAVs. So it's a function of both of them are similar, but they address the different airspaces. The one addresses the higher airspace, the other addresses the lower airspace, and eventually in future there will be a time where the UTM and ATMs will need to integrate and communicate with each other as well. So with that kind of problem and understanding what is the problem and why what is an UTM, just kind of like giving some definitions. What is a UTM? Different names, different people use in different parts of the world as UAV, RPA, drone, UAS, and whatnot. But it's all kind of like UAV traffic management system. Typically, any UTM system is basically a cloud-based client server architecture based software or a system. And I would say that it is not just one software, or it's not one piece of software, but it's kind of like a system of systems. And then that works well in the center with the rest of the systems. We're going to look at what are all the other systems as well, but it's more in a traditional world, it's a platform as a service or a software as a service. So many of you may be aware that a SaaS platform or PaaS, and a UTM system is may be available in multiple formats, like just said in the very beginning. But what they do is they basically offer the following main core services, the UTM services. Some of the core services include, it deals with the registration of the UAVs, identification of the UAVs. So they provide services to, manage the registration and identification service, part of functionality. It deals with the flight planning. So you can say mission planning or, your flight planning or whatever, depending on where you come from, what background you have. And then getting the authorizations and approvals from the concerned departments, like, in the case of Airport Authority of India in India or DGCA. And then it also, deals with the conformance monitoring. Once you have a plan that's approved by the concerned agencies, making sure that that plan, that operation is in conformance with the authorized, given the approval. So they're kind of like geofencing and conformance monitoring and tracking in real time, where you are in the space with respect to, the lat launch as well as with respect to the other traffic and things like that. And also being aware of the surrounding situational awareness. So, and then it also deals with the airspace management services. Being the airspace management platform or a software, it needs to know the available airspace and also needs to be able to facilitate the operations and authorizations through that. And in addition to these core services, there could also be some other operational support related services depending upon the use case or application where the EAV is being used. But otherwise, pretty much these are the core services, but these are only the core services. There could be more than this that a UTM implementer can decide to offer as part of the UTM solution. From a overall ecosystem, if you look at it, where does the UTM or US, UTM is also in some parts of the world, like where I am here in USA, it's being referred to as unmanned services supplier. In India, we call it as digital sky service provider, and other parts of the world, we may have different names, but it's again, UAS service supplier or UTM provider, or, service provider basically. But if you look at from an ecosystem perspective, it nicely fits into the center of the overall, the stakeholders in the ecosystem. And you can imagine, it communicates with pretty much everybody in the ecosystem. To be able to provide those core services, it does need the data from the data providers like weather data. So you need to know the weather, real-time weather data, weather forecast, and you also need to know what the terrain data, ground obstacles and things like that. You also need to know what the air traffic data is. So if you're flying a drone in the area, what is the traffic manned aircraft that's flying in that area, right? So you also need to know. So it integrates with that as well. And then the drones and UAVs is another, the main piece of it. And then the law enforcement, public users, and security agencies is another piece of a big stakeholders here. And different types of technologies in terms of, how do we communicate and how do we track them and things like that. Depending upon which part of the world we are, which country we are, each country may have its own national level implementation of, authorization system. In the case of India, we have Digital Sky that's being, developed for Indian national airspace. In the case of United States, we have FAA developed LANC, and in other parts of the world, in other countries, they may have their own implementations. But these are the underlying backbone systems that will enable the service providers like UTM providers to provide the complete solutions to the end users. So when we look at from an UTM system perspective, what are the things that any UTM implementation provider need to keep in mind? What is important is that the reason for UTM is to manage the airspace to ensure the safety and security of it, right? So that is the top level priority requirements. So when we look at that, these are kind of like guiding characteristics, you would say, or you want to say that these are the main requirements that one needs to meet. But it needs to provide a safety aspect of it. When we talk about the safety, then you talk about all these safety related requirements. You have the security aspect of it. When you talk about the security, you talk about the identification, authorizations, tracking, traceability, and data privacy and things like that. Transparency. So when you have thousands, hundreds and thousands of drones flying, how do we ensure that everybody gets a fair access to the airspace, right? So you don't get priority or I don't get, ping down, thing like that. So there's a transparency in terms of the flight plan authorizations and airspace access and things like that. And then there's also flexibility. So if you look at the UAV space, the space is huge, and there's different kinds of UAVs, manufactured by different manufacturers in the world. And then how do we make sure that these UTM systems, UTM systems being primarily a software-oriented solutions, how do these software-oriented solutions work well with, all these different drone manufacturers, drone hardware systems and things like that, So how do we make that as a platform agnostic such that it works with, majority of those UAV platforms? And every country has its own rules in terms of how do we manage the national airspace. So if you are a UTM provider in one place, how do we, use that UTM system in another place? How can we adapt it to the different regulations? And even in the same country, the rules are changing, with the changing requirements. How do we make sure that, we stay compliant with it without having much burden or overhead on the end users or the operators, So the operator doesn't have to worry about, what do I need to do to be able to do that? Let's just use that, use the systems to address the problem. And then how easy the system is so that the operator focus should be main focus should be of doing the job that he has at his hand, rather than worrying about the regulatory compliance and things like that. And is there an additional cost to use a UTM system? If it is, then is it going to be cost effective and things like that? And as the number of operations increase, as the scale grows, is it going to be scalable? So these are all kind of like different characteristics of UTM system that one needs to be focused on when we are designing the UTM system. So from a different perspective, from an operator perspective, assuming some of you or majority of you are from an operational drone operator or pilot background. If you look at it, where the UTM will offer services, where it will provide you value to the end operator. If you look at it in a pre-flight phase, in-flight phase, and post-flight phase, what services a UTM system typically offers. It facilitates the planning part of it, giving you the complete situational awareness of, where the no-fly zones are, restricted areas are, where you are allowed to fly, where you are not allowed to fly, what kind of requirements, checklists you need to have, and things like that. And then it gets you the authorizations from the concerned department, and it can also facilitate the pre-flight checks. Are you ready to fly? Are you good to go? Just like in an aircraft where you have electronic flight checklist, so you can have a similar thing as part of the same application. And then when you are planning, as a system being a cloud-based platform or a software, it can ensure that your plan does not conflict with anybody else's plan, so that in the planning phase itself, the safety aspect, separation aspect is addressed. If you go into the in-flight phase, okay, I got my plan done and I got my approval done, now I'm ready to go, I'm flying now. Then in flight, what a UTM system provides. So it facilitates a real-time tracking of your vehicle, so we know where your vehicle is, especially in the case of BVLOS operations, right? So when you're flying your drone beyond visual line of sight, beyond maybe beyond what you can see, depending upon where you are, what the ground obstacles and terrain elevations are, right? So it will give you a complete real-time tracking and situational awareness and a map type of application with all 2D and 3D situational awareness, supplemented with all kinds of other data, like other aircrafts flying in the vicinity, other drones flying in the vicinity, things like that. And then it can also provide a correlation with the other flights that are taking place, in the area. And then having the access to all those different, aircraft data, UAV data, and all the other obstacle data, it can also provide you collision advisories, right? Collision detect and avoid type of advisories. So it can early warn you that something can go wrong if you continue down this path. So you may want to change your course and things like that. If something changes dynamically in flight, maybe in your flight or maybe in somebody else's flight, the system can automatically do that kind of detection and let you know that something came up. You may want to just immediately land. For example, some emergencies event happens, then you have to land, then dynamic deconfliction, things like that. Post flight, so through the pre-flight, in-flight operation takes place, it has access to all the data and like positional telemetry data that it is capturing. So it can take care of all the log information for you, so that if there are any compliance related requirements where you need to send the logs to the agencies and things like that, the systems can facilitate that. And data analytics is kind of like another piece of feature that UTM systems typically offer, but I don't think we will need to get into that details here for the for this. So in summary, if you look at it, that just one thing that I wanted to highlight is that in general, in the public, there is an opinion that the UTMs are BVLOS, but in reality, UTMs are not just for BVLOS. UTM is required for any operation. You can use it for even VLOS operation. Yes, of course, it is more useful when you are conducting the beyond visual line of sight operation because you are not able to see the drone. But even when you are doing the within the line of sight operation, you can use the UTM system for all other services like getting the approvals and authorizations and being able to track and being able to manage the flight logs, getting complete situational awareness, right? So the UTM systems can be used both for VLOS and BVLOS operations. It's the one huge difference between the UAV operations and other aircraft operations is that the way the regulatory agencies are looking at is that given that these operations are going to be close to the ground, close to the people, close to the assets, right? That the risk of the damage is higher. So the requirements are going to be very stringent for the UAV operations as compared to when compared to the aircraft operations. So given that the requirements are going to be highly safety oriented, stringent requirements, there is a need for new systems that will meet these requirements and that will ensure that the airspace is safe, the low altitude airspace is safe, ensuring that the people and the property are safe or beneath the drone when it is flying. So then there is definitely it's not that when you go for the BVLOS operation that we need the UTM system, but the UTM system can be used and need to be used and integrated with all other systems. And I would say that for every single operation. These are just some screenshots from our application, just to give some of you guys some idea of how our application looks like. But if you are interested, you can always go to this link and play with it. Get some feel of how our UTM system is. This is the link to our UTM system. But so as I said, we offer the service APIs, we offer web application. We are also planning to release a mobile application very soon. It will be in the Android Play Store. App Store, app will come later. But just wanted to give you a glimpse of our application here. Front end user facing application. The back end is huge. And this is our contact information. If anybody has any questions in terms of want to learn more about UTM or want to work with us or integrate with us, talk to us, this is our contact information. I think that is it from my end. Dr. Ruchi, we can open up for question and answers.
Thank you, Shravan. Can we take the question answer after Olivier's presentation?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you so much. So you can stop presenting your slide so I can ask Olivier to come online.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Hi, Olivier, are you around, please?
Yes, I am around. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Olivier. How are you?
Doing great. So I'm going to be sharing my screen. Great. You should. Can somebody confirm that you can see my screen?
We can.
Great.
See it. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ruchi, for inviting me to present about Village Reach experience around medical drone or the use of drone for delivering healthcare product. My name is Olivier Defawe. I'm a director at Village Reach, director of the health system team. And Village Reach is a non-profit organization that his mission is really to transform the healthcare delivery in order to reach everyone, no matter where the community is, no matter how hard it is. We aspire to vision where each person has the healthcare they need to thrive. And one of the program that we are conducting at Village Reach is around the exploration of drone for delivery in order to accomplish this mission. And so we have, over the last 7 years, actually, we've been involved in that space. And 7 years ago, the space was barely starting. Drones were used for mapping, for taking videos and pictures and so on, so different use cases, but actually use of drone for delivery is quite new. And Village Reach for the last 7 years has been supporting both the government to identify where and when and how drone makes sense to strengthen the public health supply chain, and to help them develop the enabling environment that would allow them to use the drone. And I'm going to go in a little deeper into what does that mean exactly. We also support the service providers, so drone manufacturer and drone service provider, to make sure that the technology they are developing is really adapted to the need of the different governments or partners. And finally, we also work with the community of donors, bilateral, multilateral donors, and private foundation, to provide them a summary of, okay, what are the existing evidence, and try to help them strategize on their and future investment. So we've been involved for the last 7 years and have conducted so far five implementation program, a few in Malawi. Actually, we've done 3 in Malawi around the use case of drone for emergency response, delivery blood and oxytocin, and you see the partner there. In Mozambique, we are currently working with Suoperio, which is a drone service provider that was selected through a very extensive selection process, and we're actually about to publish this tool to help partners select what are the right questions, what should you be looking at and asking those hundreds of drone service providers now out there in the world to make sure that you are going to be selecting the right tool. The right tool, meaning the right drone platform. In Mozambique, so we're using drone for delivering and picking up samples, starting with TB samples, picking up and then delivering also results. In DR Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, the entry point there is around the use of drone for vaccine. But all these are entry points: TB samples, vaccine, blood oxytocin. This is mainly driven by the nature of the funding, but we never limit the transport to only those entry-level products. We transport any product that the government and the partner needs to be transported. In the DR, Dominican Republic, we actually partner with Caerobotics and the Flying Lab in DR, and you will have a presentation on the results I think in a couple of days about this project, where in this case we didn't lead the implementation, but we supported the Flying Lab, providing the expertise around measuring performance and measuring cost and cost efficiency of the use of drone as compared to land-based transport. Supply chain, the drone, drone is only solving some supply chain problems. Drones will not solve all the problems that the last mile supply chain is facing. This is a short list of the typical problem around supply chain in low to middle income countries, last mile supply chain, which is really the when you start going from the subnational level all the way down to the community level. Those are typical, and the drone really is focusing on solving some of those transportations, poor infrastructure, road infrastructure, long distance, isolated, even permanently, like islands, like in Vanuatu, or in case of flooding, sometimes the road are just not practical. And you have an example here below in Mozambique during rainy season where the road got washed out by the river, and those communities there were isolated for months. I wanted to share with you, I was facilitating a session at the African Drone Forum, which took place in February in Rwanda. I was facilitating the working session around how to integrate drone into a public health supply chain. And one question that during the session we ask people, okay, what comes to mind when you think about drone logistics or the use of drone for supply chain? And those are the keyword that comes to mind, delivery, speed, sustainability, regulation, fast, last mile, safety, and all these are what came into mind, which really illustrate the fact that drone is a complex system. Drone is not just the bird, is not just the hardware, and the previous speaker talked about UTM. Well, yeah, the UTM is part of the UAS, unmanned blanking on the name, believe me or not. UTM,
unmanned air vehicle traffic management.
Traffic
can help you with it.
Yeah, but the UAS, the S
Unmanned
is for
aerial system.
Yeah,
system. So because we are talking about the whole system. And here you have on the left of the table here, you have some of those subsystem elements that need to be in place for the drone service delivery to perform, to be reliable, to be safe, to be operational, and so on. Those include some subsystem elements from the logistics. You need to have the right infrastructure. You need to have the human resources. You need to have a business model to make that operation sustainable, efficient, cost efficient, and sustainable. You need the solution to be integrated. Drones are not there to replace truck, to replace motorcycle, the current mode of transportation. It's to complement the actual existing mode of transportation where it makes sense. And like I said, drone is very early on of its development, and it's like in the 40s when pickup truck were starting to be used in the low and middle income country for last mile delivery. In the 40s, the truck were not reliable. We have no idea of how much it truly costs to operate, maintain, sustain trucks. The human resources to maintain trucks was not there, was in development. All this, and it was because the system, the drone the truck delivery in the 40s in the last mile wasn't early on. Now, there is policy, there is resources, and so on. Human resources, there is regulation around the use of 4x4. So you can see the analogy here now. The use of UAS are like similarly to where the truck were 70 years ago. So we are still very early on. So keep that in mind. I want to take a few minutes about use cases, about when we want to use drone for delivery. We did recently a study with BCG, Boston Consulting Group, where we actually look at existing use cases, looking at all the different projects that have been happening over the years. And we were able to identify 26 use cases. And here you have a summary of those use cases regrouped by cluster: individual emergency, humanitarian emergency, diagnostic two-way delivery, just-in-time resupply, and then vector control with some specification of what are the specific application and the example. And we perform about 100 plus interview of stakeholders, governments, private sector, and so on, to implementers, to try to prioritize, okay, which use cases should be prioritized from a impact standpoint. At the end of the day, we are looking at drone to having an impact on the performance of the public health supply chain. Okay, and we looked at different through different lens. We look at the health impact potential versus the potential impact on the supply chain, as well as the feasibility. And this is just an illustration, but basically 4 use cases came out as a priority based on their potential impact on health, supply chain performance, and feasibility, which are the delivery in response to emergency, the two-way transport logistics, the just-in-time resupply, and the campaign, just-in-time campaign, like for example, the performance of vaccine campaign. And therefore, this work was done to help the donor community prioritize where they should invest or not, to what use cases, instead of being too like all over the place, so to be more strategic. And then for the community, Village Reach, with all his experience implementing drone for the last 4 or 5 years, drone projects for delivering, we develop a roadmap that is based on a phase approach, where once you defined, in each environment is different, you have to first identify what is your real problem that you're trying to solve. And does really drone make even sense? You got to test that. And so you do that during a phase 1, which is a very small phase, both in terms of time and scope and coverage, which the main goal is to demonstrate in your environment of interest the safety, the acceptability, and the feasibility. What does that mean? That will require you to have all the permission from the regulatory agencies for importing huge tasks just to import drone into your country. If you don't have the resource, the drone service provider in country, obviously, and then get the authorization for even flying for this phase 1, and then you're going to be flying to show that your platform can perform and fly safely in your environment. A lot of the technology is coming from the West or from Europe, and they're not adapted. When you put them into the real life environment, they are failing, and so they need to work with a service provider to really make sure that the platform is actually performing reliably and safely. Then you move on phase 2, where you actually start gathering evidence on the impact, the effectiveness, and the efficiency of drone when it's integrated into the public health supply chain, and you use it for a sustained period of time. Because if you look at cost, the beginning of a project is always more expensive. What we want to know is that, okay, what is the impact of drone on the health and on the cost when it's not at the wrap up stage, but when it's at the routine use, when things are starting to stabilize, mature. I think it's a little extreme to say mature. I think you need more than a year and a half to talk about a solution being mature. And then the third phase is like, okay, even more time, use of drone to really start looking at business models, sustainability, and trying to develop the business model in order to make your solution sustain what you demonstrate during phase 2. And I wanted to illustrate very quickly a case around DRC that we led in Congo, where during phase 1 we had an extensive community perception study, because your community perception study will inform the communication strategy with your communities and with the different stakeholders. You need to understand what is the current status, the perception now, and then you developed your strategy and the messaging and the how to deliver, how to do community outreach using radios and flyers and so on, to make sure that the community and the stakeholder have a real understanding of what you're trying to do, what are drones, and so on. And one thing that we did also, we developed a national and subnational drone commission with stakeholders from different ministries and with different expertise that are responsible to oversight a project, a drone project, any drone project in DRC. So we did that for the government themselves, not just for the Village Reach project, but to empower local stakeholders in the government to really be part of the decision, should it go for phase 1 to phase 2, phase 2 for phase 3, and to really provide an oversight. And so during phase 1, we were able to successfully fly with Super Aero and demonstrate the safety, the feasibility. We were like in the middle of the Equator province, in the middle of the forest, extreme remote, and we were able to save from a trip that took by road 4 hours. 4 hours, because there is a lot of river to pass, and you have to take a small boat to pass some bigger river, and so on. And we're able to do that in 20 minutes. So it was really important to show the potential and to show that it was safe, and to sensitize the community that are going to be directly affected. And as a result, the National Commission and the Provincial Commission gave the approval to, okay, this looks really good, this looks safe, this looks, the community wants it, we see a value, you are authorized to go on phase 2, which we started in September, which is routine use of the drone to start generating that evidence. And now we are about to fly a fleet of 7 drones simultaneously to cover an area that is 4 times the size of Rwanda. An area, the Equator province, the whole province, which cover 1.5 million people over a surface that is bigger than France and Germany, and Spain and Italy combined together. So huge surface area, and do that for a minimum of 12-month routine to really start gathering that evidence. And we're going to do that also through the partnership with the private sector, which is the preparation for, okay, what would be the business model if phase 2 is successful and we want to continue and sustain, you have to already think about what is the business model that will allow us to continue this operation. This is just the DRC use case, but there is also Malawi and Mozambique. And so, but the summary of the big learnings across the 5 implementation that Village Reach has done so far is you really need to highlight and understand the gaps, the problem, the perception that your communities and the stakeholder at all level has about drone in order to really do a good job around setting up the enabling environment to have drone be accepted by all communities and stakeholders. Drone is a system to be put in place. So that means that you need multidisciplinary stakeholder to be involved. Ministry of Communication, Transport, Ministry of Health, Civil Aviation, and so on and so on. And all those have different understanding, different backgrounds. So you have to customize your message, your approach, and have spent a lot of time coordinating with them and involving them. That takes a long time, that a lot of the time people undermine the amount of time it takes. We really emphasize on you must do a test flights. Don't think that everything gonna, even with the best drone service provider, the best drone technology, you will have issue. And the last thing you want to do is to have issue during, your official kickoff or during. You need to do a lot of test flight in the environment where you will be using the drone. And so we, for example, for phase one, before having the drone demonstrate the safety feasibility, we have flights before, many flights before, just repeating again and again that use cases just to make sure that everything is good. But also, once you show that it's safe and reliable, people expectation are really high. They want okay, well, why can we continue? So you also have to be prepared to scale up very fast and implement very fast. So while you have to go step by step, you also have to, in case everything goes well, expectations gonna go quick, high expectation very quick, and you're gonna manage that and be prepared for that. Other lesson learned is public-private partnership is critical. Even though a lot of the time government wants to own and operate drone just like they operate truck, it's not always the perfect case to think that the government is going to be able to operate, maintain, so on, such a very complicated technology. But that doesn't mean that they should be owning the system or owning the integration of the system. And so working with identifying the right partnership with the private sector, the role and responsibility is really critical. Don't forget, right now, drones are still early on, so they're still rather expensive, or I would say they may be more costly than the performance of a motorcycle, but it will, first of all, it will evolve. The drone, the cost of drone is going to go down, the maintenance as it gets more popular, but also don't forget how much does life is worth, saving life is worth. Don't forget that, and make sure that the donors and your partner keep that in mind, that this is to save life, and how much do you value people's life. Two more slides I have. This is about tools that is available to the community. So we are part of this community, and we do work with funding from the donors to generate tools, framework. One of them is the evidence generation toolkit, which is adapted to a different phase, defining the problem, phase 1, 2, and 3, which is, provide you with framework to evidence generation, research and evaluation question, list of indicators and sample collection data collection methodology and tools that is available to you to help you and to accelerate the development of drone for delivery. So that's available, and that's available to the community. And I want to remind, maybe some of you are part of that, the UAV for Paleo Delivery Working Group, which is regroup a lot of different partners, over 300 partners from different areas, from donors to government, civil aviation, implementer, drone service provider, that we regroup every month, a month and a half. We have webinars, and we have a website. You have the website there, where all those tools that I've been mentioning how to select the appropriate drone platform, evidence generation toolkit, a database with all the results from drone delivery around the world is available to you to help you with exploring the use of drone for payload delivery. So I'm going to stop here, and you have, I think Dr. Rushan has my contact, Village Reach, if you have further questions. Thank you very much. I know it's really late for you, so I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, Olivier, and thank you so much, Shravan. Both of you have been so generous in sharing your knowledge with all of us, and we really, really admire whatever you have done. This again tells me that it's not just about drones, as we tell in Robotics and Flying Labs. It's a lot more that goes into it. So, Olivier, for me, the takeaway from your presentation was that haste is waste. It's always good to spend time, do things gradually, slowly, evolve, and take people along with you, right? So now I would open the floor for questions from our students. And who would be taking the session? Amit today?
I'm there, ma'am.
Yes, Amit. So over to you. Thank you so much.
So, first question is from Mayank. Really insightful presentation, Mr. Dr. Oliver. Could you please give concrete examples of some diverse, sustainable business models that you have seen coming up in this domain?
Thank you, Amit, for this great question. Business model that has been working so far is actually, there's not that many that is being tested. I'm sure you've all heard about Zipline. Zipline is one business model that it's one business model that's going to be difficult to repeat because there is a lot of investment, early investment from donors to allow the drone service provider Zipline to operate in country. And then after that, it's a partnership between the government and the service provider where the government is actually paying on the flight basis this drone service provider. So in this case, the early investment was coming from a third party to allow the drone service provider to set in the country and set everything. And then it's between the government and the private sector, the government, and the drone service provider to define, on the cost model, which in this case is per flight. Now we are in discussion with, Village Reach is actually in discussion with a logistic firm. You have the UPS, you have the Amazon, you have the in Africa there is Bolloré. It's a big logistic, because they are interested to add drone into the service offering. So now you have expert on logistics, right? You would say, we agree that, for example, the UPS or the Bolloré are expert on logistics. It's no better people, not more knowledgeable, capable than those big logistic firms. But that they want to explore, we want to be able to offer drone delivery services. And so we've been exploring and facilitating the discussion between big firm, logistic firm, and small drone service provider, and trying to find, how can you make this drone as a service offering, but managed by expert? Because drone service provider are usually tech people. They may have some logistic knowledge, but they're definitely not the big expert with the many years and of experience of big firm, logistic firm. So leveraging those two private sector firm value proposition and trying to find a partnership between those two private companies, and then define, because usually some of those big logistics have already partnership with government. So it's not yet a very many business model that have been tested, and that's probably why Amit, you asked me that. What is out there that's working? It's not really well defined yet, because drone for delivery has not been routinely implemented for a long period of time. There's only a handful of cases where drone is being used for a long period of time and where business cases being tested. Right now, it's still rather small implementation, which is not appropriate for really validate a business model. Thank you.
Okay, sir. So another question from my side would be like both for both of you, talking about UTM or any situation where a drone is being flown at a lower level, for example, for surveillance or maybe for short-range deliveries or something. So the structure of the area needs to be constant for a very long period of time to establish this thing.
Can you clarify what you mean by constant?
So, for example, if the area is under constant development, there are new buildings coming up, there are new installations coming up every day or every month, every week.
Right.
So, similarly, structure is developing every certain time. So, what would be the suggestion there?
Right. So that would be on the, if you looked at the ecosystem, right, that the UTM integrates with several other supplementary service providers. One of them would be a provider, whether it's UTM manages it or they do rely on other supplementary service provider. The obstacle, ground-based obstacles and buildings and that type of information, if it is constantly evolving, there has to be a method where you periodically get the updated data, right? So that should be part of the the service updates that they offer.
Okay, thank you for that answer.
Oliver,
there's a question by Mariam.
Oliver, I have one question for you. When we work with the governments, what are the basic expectations that they have from drone delivery? Are they kind of looking at replacing their systems, improving systems, or it's just the outcomes that they're trying to meet, like reduce maternal mortality? Is that the ultimate goal that they want? And no matter how you do it, it doesn't matter. Because village reach, I believe it's not just in drones, it's into a lot of other things. So is the expectation spelled out to you is that, look, this is the indicator we are looking at meeting and do it anyhow, and then you bring in drones? Or is it that they want drones because everybody's doing it?
Yeah. So you're very right, Dr. Ruchi. Drone is sexy. You go to, they hear that, and oh my gosh, we want this, we need this and that. And like you said, Village Reach help government improve the delivery of healthcare. And we don't do drone everywhere. We look at the problem. Their interest is that we want to improve the vaccine rate, or we want to make sure there's no stock out on any product. And we look at the problem together with them, and we're like, okay, you want drone, but okay, drone is a system to put in place. It's not just buying a drone. So let's look, is it really the right solution to your problem, or is it something easier, quicker to change or to strengthen? Maybe it's a human resources issue, or maybe it's a data management issue. It's actually not a drone issue, a solution, a problem that's going to be solved by the drone. So the expectation from the very get-go is like, oh, we reach out to Village because we heard you have drone expertise. We want drone in our country. Well, you got to take them through the journey, the thinking like, okay, what is your problem you're trying to solve? And work with them in if you allow me, educate or sensitize about what is that, what's your problem? What does that mean really implementing drone in all the complexity? It's not just buying a drone and flying it and so on. And somebody is asking, what is one of the advice that you would give to somebody who plan to run one company in their community? One advice that I will give you, I was starting to write it, but maybe I can say it verbally, is like involve, don't be alone, involve the community, involve the local stakeholder. Make sure it's a team effort and that you leverage their knowledge, you leverage their knowledge, and you work with them through the exercise. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Drone is complex, right now it's costly, and it may not be the right thing to do. But in case if it is, then you have to work through them with the many steps, and I show you phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 to make sure that you're going to be successful. The last thing you want is a disaster. The last thing is an accident, because you will walk backwards many steps, rather than, it's better to take your time and go step by step than going fast and fail once, because you'll be stepping back many steps if you fail once.
And have
Well,
you also come across governments which are too impatient to allow this thing and they just want drones tomorrow?
Yeah, of course. And there, it happens, and if we feel that we're not going to be successful, we push back. We just will not implement drone when we don't think it's safe or the right solution, because it will impact the whole space. A failure in one country will impact the perception on drone globally. So the impact will be bigger than just in your country or in your region or whatever.
Yeah, if I can add just one point to Dr. Olivier's thing, right? To Mariam's question, one advice that we have out to ourselves and to everybody in the community is that this is a very unique space, and a very huge space. Regardless what role you are playing, work together with the rest of the players in the ecosystem. Just don't be in silos and don't try to solve the entire part of the puzzle. And Dr. Olivier said, the drone is just one piece of the whole puzzle, right? So you have to solve the problem from a whole big picture solution perspective. So whatever role you are bringing to this space, get integrated and work together with the rest of the players in the space, and try and avoid not making the same mistakes that others have made.
Perfectly said, Shravan. And I think this is the wisdom we should carry forward from this class as well. That drones, yes, they are super fancy, but that's not the only thing that we have to look at. Even UTM, the way you said, you just don't have the unmanned traffic layer at the 500 feet. You have all the layers above that as well. So there is a lot of complications to think about before you start dreaming that you will have drones in your country tomorrow. And Olivier, when you took almost 1 year to implement in one tiny country. Imagine if we are dreaming for a country like India, what kind of complication we would probably have to look at. We have expansive lands and dense populations and complicated government structures and politics and lobbying. There are a lot of more struggles and battles for us to win. And so I hope if anybody has any question or any comment, then you can please unmute yourself and talk.
Hi, Shravan. Mayank here. I had a question for you. The UTM software or the ecosystem that is being built right now, is it only from the perspective of the ground control system for BVLOS or even like line of sight operations, or does an element also go onto the drone firmware itself? Like I wanted to understand specifically for something like dynamic deconflicting.
Sure. So the strategic and dynamic deconfliction and tracking, all that part, as part of the UTM system, I think to answer your first question, our solution offers both the options. You can do the, along with the firmware updates on the vehicle, or you can also do alongside the GCS. So there are two options depending upon your, configuration and, which is the best suitable method for you. But we, as a UTM provider, we support both the options. And regarding the dynamic deconfliction, that is where, as a UTM and being well integrated with the rest of the UTM and DSP providers, we do have access to the dynamic data, where we bring in the dynamic confliction and outputs to the vehicle, that is connected through the UTM system.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I believe we have come to the end of the class tonight. Thank you so much once again, Olivier and Shravan. Thank you for your generosity once again, and thank you for being my guest. And we hope to keep learning from you. I have been learning from you, Olivier, since last many years. you and Village Reach, and I think I read everything that you write about, every document that you publish, every toolkit that you provide, and I use them in my consulting practice. And I try to, you call it dynamic deconfliction in UTM. I call it dynamic deconfliction in the real consulting, when we talk to governments, when we talk to different providers, and we are coming on board as consultants. So this has been really helpful to me as well. And I really hope we had some of the reading my reference materials from Village Reach in the assignments given to you, the class. So please go through it. It's extremely useful, and it's been extremely useful to me as well. So thank you very much once again. We will close the class tonight. It's almost 8:20 in Nepal and about 8:05 in India. And in US, I would say that good morning and have a great day. And for everybody else, good night and good evening, everybody. Bye bye. See you.
Thank you. Mayank and Anil, if you have further questions on the NPNT and UTM, do not hesitate to reach us out through the email. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Good
coming.
night to
Thank you.
the people
Bye-bye.
in India and Nepal. Bye.
Good night.